Have you ever sat alone at the kitchen table with your cup of coffee, looked at the phone, and thought, why haven't they called? Maybe it's been a week, maybe a month, maybe longer than you'd like to admit. Your kids are grown now. They have jobs, families, responsibilities. Life gets busy, you tell yourself. But there's that quiet ache in your chest. The ache of being forgotten. Or maybe not forgotten, but put on the back burner. If that hits home, I want you to know something. You're not alone. Millions of older adults feel exactly this way. But here's the beautiful truth most people miss. It's not too late. Not by a long shot. You still have an incredible power that's often overlooked. The power to ask the right questions. The kind of questions that stir the heart, that linger in the mind. That spark connection deeper than any holiday dinner or short phone call ever could. In this video, we're talking about 6 questions. 6 simple, heartfelt but powerful questions that can stir something inside your adult children and make them miss you, really miss you. Not out of guilt or obligation, but because something inside them awakens. A memory, a longing, a realization that they need you more than they realized. So if you've been feeling invisible, overlooked, or like your presence in their life has become background noise, let's change that, starting now. Let's begin with the first question. Think back to your own childhood for a moment. Do you remember how comforting it felt to hear your mother or father ask, "What's been on your mind lately?" Not in a nosy way, but in a quiet, genuine, I care about you way. That's our first question. Ask your child, not just once, but when the timing feels right, maybe over coffee, during a walk, or in a moment of calm. What's been weighing on your heart lately? You see, this question does something special. It invites honesty without pressure. It lets them know you're not just there for the birthdays and family photos, but for the messy stuff too. For the uncertainty, the doubts, the stress that piles up and has nowhere to go. And even if they don't answer fully at first, just knowing that someone, you, wants to carry a little piece of their burden can create a ripple of warmth that lasts for days. And here's the thing. When you ask this kind of question, you aren't just showing love. You're reminding them of what your presence has always meant. Safety, wisdom, home. I remember speaking to a woman named Darlene. She's 74, lives in Nebraska, has 3 grown kids spread across the country. For a while, she told me, she felt like a ghost in their lives. She sent birthday cards, got a few texts back, but then she tried something different. During a call with her oldest son, she paused and said, "Hey, I don't mean to pry, but is there anything heavy you've been carrying lately? You've sounded tired." There was silence, a long one. But then he told her about his job stress, how he felt like he was failing as a father. They talked for over an hour. And guess what? The calls haven't stopped since. He calls every week now, not because he has to, but because he wants to. That's what one question can do. Now let's move to the second question. This one might feel a little bold, but trust me, it's powerful. What's something I did as your parent that stuck with you, even if I never knew it did? You see, your children, no matter how old they are carrying pieces of you everywhere they go. A phrase you always said. A way you handled stress. The way you hugged them after a long day. You may not even remember doing it, but it left a fingerprint on their soul. This question gives them a chance to tell you. And when they do, it often surprises both of you. It brings out a story, a moment, a feeling that might have been buried under years of busy schedules and adult responsibilities. And more importantly, it reminds them vividly of why you matter. I had a gentleman named Frank tell me that when he asked his daughter that question, she burst into tears. She told him that when she was 13 and went through a really painful time at school, he wrote a note and slipped it under her door. He didn't even remember doing it, but she had kept it all these years. That note, she said, was the reason she kept going some days. These are the moments that reconnect hearts. These are the moments your kids don't even realize they've forgotten until you bring them back with one loving question. Now maybe you're wondering, what if my kids aren't very open? What if they don't like to talk? That's okay. It doesn't mean they don't feel. Some people just need space. Some questions land softly at first, like a pebble dropped in a still pond. You might not see the ripples right away, but trust me, they're moving underneath. The beauty of aging, my friend, is that you carry decades of patience, perspective, and grace. You don't need quick fixes or flashy gestures. You have something even better, the ability to listen deeply, to ask wisely, and to love without keeping score. You're not here to be impressive. You're here to be unforgettable. And that brings us to the third question, which I'll share with you in just a moment. But first, take a second and breathe. You've already done so much just by being here, watching this, and choosing to connect more deeply with the people you love. That alone is powerful. That alone is enough to start a shift in your relationship. The third question is one that may surprise you with how much it reveals, and it's this. If you had to describe our relationship in just 3 words, what would they be? Now, I know that might sound a little odd at first, maybe even risky. But here's why it works. It's short, it's thoughtful, and it encourages real reflection. You're not asking them to write a novel or dig up their childhood journals. You're simply asking for 3 honest words. That's it. But what those 3 words contain, that can be everything. See, you're giving your child a moment to pause and reflect, to take inventory of what your bond truly feels like to them. Not what it used to be, not what you hope it is, but what it is right now. Maybe they say steady, loving, distant. That last one might sting, but don't panic. Because in that one word, they've opened a door, and you've shown them that you're ready to walk through it without defensiveness. That takes courage. That takes heart. Or maybe they'll say something like, strong, funny, safe. And in that moment, both of you might just realize how solid your connection still is, even if it's been quiet lately. Whatever they say, those 3 words become a starting point, not an ending. I once met a man named Richard. He's 82 now, still sharp as a tack, lives in a little lakeside town in Michigan. He asked this question to his daughter during a Sunday call, and she said, respectful, formal, safe. Formal, she said. That one sat with him. He thought about it for a few days. Then he wrote her a letter. In it, he told her how he wished he'd been more relaxed as a father, more emotionally open. That letter led to a conversation. That conversation led to a weekend visit. And that weekend turned into something deeper, a relationship not built on routine calls, but real connection. So don't underestimate the power of this question. The answer may be simple, but the healing it can bring, profound. Now let's shift to the 4th question. This one is a gentle bridge between the past and the present. What's one thing you wish we had done more of when you were growing up? Don't ask this to beat yourself up. Don't ask it to relive regrets. Ask it to understand, to connect. Because here's the truth. We all did the best we could with the tools we had. You loved them with everything you knew how to give. But every child grows up with little gaps they never quite voiced. This is a way to let them finally say it, and to let you show them that it's never too late to listen. One mother I spoke to, her name's Evelyn, a fiery 76-year-old from North Carolina, told me that when she asked her son this question, he got quiet. Then he said, I wish we'd played more. Just silly stuff. Pillow fights, board games, goofing around. Evelyn told me she felt a lump in her throat. She had spent so much time keeping the house together, putting food on the table, making sure he had everything he needed. But she realized he just wanted more time where nothing was needed, just joy. So the next time he visited, They played Monopoly, and then cards. And now, it's become their little ritual. All because she asked. It's not about making up for lost time. It's about creating new moments even now that feel playful and light. Because no matter how old your kids are, a part of them is still that child, longing to laugh with you. And that leads beautifully into the fifth question, one that might sound simple, but carries more emotional weight than you'd expect. What's a memory of us that still makes you smile? This question taps into something timeless, something human. We all carry moments tucked away in our minds, quiet little treasures we rarely speak about. And when you invite your child to pull one out and share it with you, you're not just creating a conversation. You're creating warmth, nostalgia, and often healing. When they recall that camping trip where it rained all night, but you stayed up playing cards in the tent, or the time you taught them how to ride a bike, even when they scraped their knee and swore they'd never try again, suddenly, you're both back there together, smiling, remembering, reconnecting. I knew a woman, Lorraine, a sweet soul from Oregon, who asked this question during a car ride with her son. He was driving her home after a doctor's appointment. She wasn't expecting much, but he said without hesitation, "The time we baked cookies for that bake sale and forgot the sugar. You laughed so hard you cried. I think it was the first time I realized adults could be silly." Lorraine said she hadn't remembered that moment in years, but hearing it from him, hearing that laughter meant something to him, made her feel seen in a way she hadn't in a long time. You never know which memory your child is carrying like a warm ember in their chest. But when you ask, you let that ember glow again. That's the quiet magic of these questions. They don't lecture. They don't demand. They invite. And I want to remind you, every time you ask something from the heart, you're giving something too. You're offering presence, curiosity, love without conditions. And even if your child doesn't answer fully the first time, the seed is planted. The feeling lingers. It's not about forcing closeness. It's about creating space for it to bloom naturally. Let's pause here for just a moment. You've come this far because something in you still longs for deeper connection, and that longing is not a weakness. It's a strength. It means your heart is still open, still beating with love and hope and tenderness. That's something to be proud of. Let's keep going. We've walked through some meaningful conversations so far, questions that open doors, soften walls, and bring the warmth back into your relationship with your children. And now we come to the sixth and final question. It's simple, disarming, and maybe the most important one of all. It's this. What do you think you've inherited from me, besides my looks? You might chuckle when you say it. Maybe they will too. But this question has a hidden depth that few realize. It asks your child to look at themselves and see you inside them. Not just your eyes, your smile, or the shape of your hands, but your character, your grit, your laughter, your lessons, the way you handle stress, the way you love others, the parts of you that they carry forward, sometimes without even knowing it. It's not about fishing for compliments. It's about helping them reflect. When they think about what they've inherited, they're forced to see their own story in a bigger light, a generational light, one that connects their present with your past, and maybe even their children's future. I once met a retired teacher named Sam. He's 79 now, lives just outside of Cleveland. He told me about asking this very question to his daughter. At first she shrugged and said, "I don't know, Dad. I guess I have your stubborn streak." They both laughed. But then she paused and said, "Actually, I think I have your calm too. When things go wrong at work, I hear your voice in my head saying, 'We don't panic. We just figure it out.'" I didn't realize how much that stuck with me. Sam told me that moment stayed with him for days. Not because it was flashy or dramatic, but because it reminded him that his influence had never left. It had just gone quiet for a while. But it was still there. Living, breathing, helping her in her life, long after the busy parenting years had passed. That's what this question does. It brings that influence into the light, where both of you can see it clearly and cherish it. And when your kids reflect on who they've become and how you helped shape that, it creates a wave of appreciation they didn't expect to feel. That's when the missing you begins. Not because they need anything from you, but because they realize what they already have. These 6 questions, when asked with love and patience, can do something extraordinary. They don't just reconnect you with your children. They remind them of who you are, not just their parent, but a person with stories, depth, humor, and heart. And you might be surprised by what rises up in them once you start these conversations. They may call more often, visit more frequently, or simply send a message that says, "Period. Hey, I was just thinking about that story you told me the other day." Because when you engage the heart, the rest tends to follow. Now, I want to take a moment to acknowledge something important. If your relationship with your kids has been strained, or even silent for a long time, this may all sound like wishful thinking. And I hear you. Life doesn't always wrap up in a neat little bow. There are wounds, old arguments, misunderstandings that still linger like clouds over a sunny day. But here's the good news. Love doesn't expire. And connection? It can be rebuilt, even from the quietest ruins. You may not get long letters or tearful reunions, but maybe, just maybe, you'll get a crack in the door. A voice that's a little softer next time. A message that shows up unexpectedly. That's how healing begins. Not in grand gestures, but in gentle moments of grace. So be the one who offers it first. Be the one who leads with curiosity, who listens more than they speak, who asks not to interrogate but to understand. Because you, dear friend, are still needed. Your kids may not always say it out loud, but they are still shaped by your presence, your voice, your strength, your stories. And the more you step into that truth, the more they will begin to remember what it feels like to have you close, even when miles or years stand in between. Before we end, I want you to take a moment and breathe that in. You still have time. You still have power. You still matter more than you know. You are not a burden. You are a legacy. And if this message speaks to you, if it touched something in your heart, then don't keep it to yourself. Share your thoughts in the comments. Let others hear your story, your experience. Let someone else know they're not alone. And if you found value in this video, please take a moment to click like and subscribe to our channel, Strong Elderly Life. We're here to support you, encourage you, and walk beside you through this beautiful, complex season of life. Together, we're creating a space where aging doesn't mean fading, it means blooming. Thank you for spending this time with me. You are seen, you are loved, and you are never ever too old to create new moments that matter. Here's to living your best life at any age.